Now, the Lagos State government has clarified the contents of a leaked memo of its Ministry of Health, which claimed that the state government approved over 61 million naira for the mass burial of 103 persons identified as 2020 EndSARS victims, which went viral on social media, sparking outrage. In a statement issued by the state government, the bodies were recovered from different parts of the state during and after the protest, and none of the 103 bodies were recovered from the Lekki toll gate in October of 2020 during the EndSARS protest against police brutality. Now, according to the Lagos State government, quote, peddlers of the news are deliberately misinterpreting and sensationalizing a letter from the Lagos State Government Public Procurement Agency titled Letter of No Objection Mass Burial for the 103, the year 2020 EndSARS victims, to misinform the public, stir the public sentiment, and cause public disaffection against the Lagos State government. For more on this, I'm joined live in the studio by Liborous Oshoma, who is a public commentator and a lawyer. Good to see you. At least that is also generating conversation. That's why we're here. First, when the first, because you have a big presence on social media, when you first saw that on social media, what readily came to mind?
Yeah, when I first saw it, two things came to my mind. The first was that this letter was going to generate the kind of controversy that is generating, considering the fact that elections, have just been over, and then secondly, that the EndSARS albatross is something that will not go away in a hurry, and so people are going to bring it up at every turn. And then secondly, one of commendation that the Lagos State government, I was shocked that the Lagos State government, even though I had expected, the content of the letter to be more explanatory, but I was shocked that the Lagos State government, had a procurement process, because I have followed closely procurement processes right from the federal government to the state level, and I discovered that not many states in Nigeria have procurement procedures, just like you have the Bureau of Public Procurement. Most procurement, federal government procurement transactions must pass through the Bureau of Public Procurement for certification and letters of no objection before, after bidding, commercial bidding, financial bidding, and so I've had course also, to take up matters on procurement with some government agencies. And looking at the states level, and I discovered that most times you find out that it is what the governor wants, that the governor wants to build school. He just announced, and then the procurement processes are bypassed. So I was kind of, impressed that, oh, look, so these people have something similar to Bureau of Public Procurement that you have. And so those were the two, mixed feelings I have. But also, I feel the letter should have been self-explanatory instead of that just, EndSARS, mass burial for EndSARS victims.
Yeah, and the conversation is out there, and that's what we have in this. But again, some of the questions people are asking is, first, we saw the chief pathologist, who testified. But before we get there, people are asking, why weren't the bodies buried before now?
Yeah, as a lawyer, these are matters, legal matters, clinical matters, health matters. This event, according to the release, happened, and then the pathologist, Professor Obafua, yes, Lagos State Teaching Hospital chief pathologist, according to his testimony, because I followed that panel report, the sitting, and then I also, read extensively the content of the report.
Now, sorry to cut you. Now that you're talking about Professor Obafua, I was going to ask you, because I also followed that, and he specifically said 99 bodies were recovered from across the state. But now we're talking about 103.
Yeah, he said that, his testimony, he said that 99 bodies were recovered across the state, and that there were, then there were about 3 others subsequently recovered. It specifically mentioned, if you remember, please permit me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he specifically mentioned, yes, he said Fagba, Ketu, Ikorodu, Orile, Ajegule, Abule Egba, Ikeja, Orile. You remember where police said there was a clash between police and some hoodlums. Ikeja, Ojota, Ekoro, Ogba, Isolo, and about 3 to 4 bodies were subsequently recovered in that Aja Aziz, if you remember. So the 99 bodies were from across various areas in the mainland area, and then 3 from the island area. So if you put all of those figures together, I think that's how they arrived at the 103, because he specifically mentioned 99 from the mainland. And so that's why I also said that the report ought to have been explicit. It ought to have flow from the testimony or the conclusion of the panel, which was taken from the testimony of the chief pathologist, that these bodies that were recovered from across Lagos State. And then secondly, I told you there's a clinical matter and legal matters, because these are relatives, these are human beings, the huge number you would say dead, unfortunate, but they are not, you can't just go bury. There are procedures, and these procedures would be that you must first and foremost, like we are talking about procurement processes also, you must first and foremost also publish for claims and objection.
Like an advertorial?
Yes, and I think Lagos State government also did that. There was a publication on Punch, November 18th, 2020, and then there's another one, a subsequent one, asking people who lost loved ones or who have missing persons, to come identify and then probably carry out DNA.
I think that's one of it, yes.
Yes. And so to ensure that people who are actually collecting these bodies are actually the owners of those bodies. And so after you made such publication, you won't be in a hurry to dispose of the body. And also, you can't just keep those bodies, ad infinitum for years. There'll be conjecture. People are looking for mortuary morgues to deposit loved ones, and then Lagos State government had said we mopped up bodies after crisis in Lagos, and then you kept these bodies for 2, 3, and then after 2 years, people have still not come. You can't just keep them like that. And I want to say something here. Yeah, I know politicians will do their thing, all of these things, but sometimes ours is not always to criticize government. When we see issues like this, there's also to point direction. That yes, these things has happened. How do we ensure that subsequently, we avoid crises such as this, where there will be, victims, dead bodies across the state, in situations like this? That's what we should be concerned about, and not to all narrow it down to Lekki Toll Gate. People have died across Lagos, some carelessly, some from, arson, some from, just careless. And there were issues where policemen also were killed. How do we ensure that subsequently such protests do not, or communal clashes?
As a social advocate, doesn't this also worry you that 103, not one family, showed up even after the adverts? So do we have so many people in Lagos or across Nigeria without families, without people to care for them? Are these homeless people?
So I will shock you to say that there's one young man late now in my estate. We used to call him IBB. This any work kind of guy, the utility guy. He will clear gutter, he would help you dig foundation, he does everything. And then one morning, people woke up to the fact that IBB, died in his sleep. No family members. We had to now call on, a gate man who now also called on the Seriki of that area, and then they organized to go bury him. There are so many people like that who came into Lagos without anybody knowing where they are. Go to Ojota sometimes and you see how people come into Lagos with trucks, with cows, and then you begin to ask yourself. A lot of Okada riders are in Lagos, a lot of people doing Agberu. Nobody knows where they are. You know, so it can happen. And then how literate are we? You know, the people say, you say your son, you are in Erumuko. Your son said he's going to Lagos. For 1 year, you have not heard from him. You don't even know where he is. But then there's an advert in the paper. You don't even read newspaper to know whether there is an advert asking people to come and identify. The aged parents are in the village. You don't even have access to phone. Or somebody came all the way from Sokoto or from Argugu to also in Lagos. And in the heat of all of this crisis, you know, he met his untimely death. So all of these challenges, and I also would want to use this as an opportunity to try to advise government to ensure that no matter how, we should consistently learn to profile people. Let's identify so that all these unknown persons. But I think this is, you know, a fallout of the lack of trust, you know, on the side of the people. You know, government should also work to build trusts. Yeah, politicians will do their thing. You try to throw spanners in the wheel. But if there is that consistent trust, you know, even if politicians try to spin stories, the people will say, well, no, for this one, we know what actually transpired.
I think it's a fine place for us to leave it. Liborous Oshoma, many thanks for speaking with us on Arise Prime Time.